All right, welcome. We are getting started. Today's webinar is about QuickBooks integration. Nowadays it takes a village to develop a product, and this is no different. In this particular venture, we have A1 Sync providing the skills that are necessary to provide the integration into QuickBooks. You have CSI Works that is providing the skills that are necessary to handle the software aspects of Clover, and Better Trade that helps us with distribution. QuickBooks integration by A1 Sync is now available on a Clover app market. And there are now two price plans and two methods of integration. Let me share a screen real quick and we'll get started. Here we go. So A1 Sync, this is how you would find this. QuickBooks Integrator by A1 Sync, and this is available on the Clover app market. If you click on Connect, you'll notice that there are three price plans available. The first one that says existing A1 Sync user, so this is for you guys, the sales organization or sales agents, to be able to make the sales on your own, and then we can enable the ones that you have sold through Clover using this here. Now, the ones that merchants can just simply sign up on their own, there are two price plans, and this is basically what you also could be selling as well. So the first one, the simple integration, is the one that says hourly sales sync daily, right? So hourly sales sync daily. What does that even mean? Well, let me show you what that means. So here you have a Clover site and you have QuickBooks site. First, let me show you that on a QuickBooks site, we can handle any flavor of desktop QuickBooks. So imagine a 24-hour cycle, right? Like a 1 day. And throughout the day on a Clover, there will be transactions, specifically transactions, because transactions are complete orders, right? So the orders that have already been paid or closed out. So transactions, and say there's 50, 60, 100,000 transactions that happened in that 1 day. And then what we will do is we'll take all of those transactions, generate a single sales order in QuickBooks. Right, so you have one document in QuickBooks that's called sales order, and then that sales order will have line items, and each line item by default will basically reflect 1 hour worth of sales and refunds, if there were any refunds during that time. Right, so total sales, total refunds, and then that's your total. And then presumably there would be 24 lines showing for each hour what happened, right? And then that single sales receipt goes into QuickBooks as a single sales receipt representing everything that has happened in Clover for that day. The level of detail that you're losing here is in QuickBooks, you'd never know what you sold. You'd know the totals, but you wouldn't know what products you sold. You wouldn't know the tie-in of customers if the customers are participating in this method, right? Like if you're assigning customers on Clover, this would be lost here, because on Clover we would create a generic customer, most likely call it Clover sales customer, and then you would have a generic product that you would call it Clover sales product, and that's what would be used to generate these line items. And that's a simple integration. The implementation will still be done by the experts, so when the merchant signs up, we'll handhold that implementation, but it's going to be done according to this plan, meaning that's how we're going to map everything out and fire it up, and the integration will start working. Now, the other method is detailed sync with map, right? So with what map, what is detail? So let me go over that, and you can see the pricing, right? So $40 for the top one and $75 a month for this one. Now, the $75 a month also requires a one-time payment. Now, this payment actually goes to the implementation to just cover the costs, because this implementation is a little involved, but don't worry, we're experts, we know what we're doing. So let me kind of break down this chart here so that it makes sense. So now, we are no longer just listening to payments. We take all the orders that are generated in Clover, right? So this is your one, because these things are drawn a bit out of sequence, but for symmetry, I think this is easier that way. So the first thing that actually gets generated on Clover is an order. An order can be either open or paid. So let's pretend an order is open. So what we want to do with the open order is to generate an invoice in QuickBooks, right? Now, the order has a couple of things in it, right? So it has products, here they are, and it has customer information. It could or it doesn't. So let's pretend that in this use case, it actually has customer information, the order. And you know how in Clover you can assign customers to order, so nothing that I'm talking about here is, you know, out of extraordinary. So far we have an order that has some products, and we have a customer that is assigned to that order. And even for more simplicity, let's say that this product is Miller Lite and the customer is John Bankers. Well, in QuickBooks, let's say the merchant, and this is basically what we're hearing, right? So this is what the merchants are telling us. And in QuickBooks, sometimes they'll actually have a one-to-one relationship, meaning for the Miller Lite that they have in QuickBooks, in Clover, they'll have a Miller Lite in QuickBooks. But what if they don't? What if in QuickBooks they're just keeping classes of income, meaning all the beers just have one product called beers, and all the flavors and types and brands of beers that are in Clover all need to be mapped to just single beers? No problem. We'll give them the cross-reference table. Well, we'll take all of the products that are coming in from Clover that are beers, and you can just point them all to beer, just one product that's on QuickBooks, or any combination of that, right? So the cross-reference table will enable the merchant to have the ability to have a certain set of products in QuickBooks and another set of products in Clover, and be able to have this integration flowing where Miller Lite is coming in from the order on Clover, and it's going into beers in QuickBooks. Customer is the same thing, and the reason why you would want to have a cross-reference for customer, here's a perfect example, right? So you have John Bankers with an apostrophe S here on this side. Maybe that was not supposed to be there, but that's how it was entered by whoever was entering it in Clover. And then in QuickBooks, that customer is actually spelled out J.B. Right? So JB. So there it is. And so in a normal integration, that's going to crap out, right? Like, how do you know that John Bankers equals to JB? With the cross-reference capabilities, you do. You can do that. And so a cross-reference table just sits there and allows the merchant to say John Bankers is JB, and that's it. So now every time when an order comes with John Bankers, we know that John Bankers is JB, and that invoice makes it to that customer in QuickBooks, right? So now, so far, we've run the open orders from Clover to QuickBooks, and that process basically happens live, right, in real time. So for every order that gets created, you get an invoice in QuickBooks. And then there are payments, and payments are related to orders, right? So a payment closes out an order, makes it complete. And in QuickBooks, a payment is a separate object. There's an invoice, and then there's a payment. And so we can do the same thing. Now, Clover allows you to split payments. QuickBooks has no problem with splitting payments. So we have no problem if you are splitting payments, you the merchant, right? So if it takes more than a couple of payments to close out an order, it will reconcile because each payment is related to that order, right? It references it. And so when it makes it all the way to QuickBooks, the same thing happens. It finds that original invoice, and all the payments that are related to that invoice will go to that invoice, and eventually it will reconcile or not. However, it'll show the exact same picture that it has in QuickBooks, is what I'm trying to say. The refunds are the third step, right? So because if there was no payment, there's nothing to refund. And so it's the same thing. If a refund needs to happen on the Clover side, in QuickBooks, it's a credit memo. And we have a way of mapping and referencing everything because in this particular integration, everything is mapped out and all the objects are utilized as objects, right? So we can create an order that has products that assigned customers. We can have payments that reference specific payment types. That's another thing that I've sort of neglected to mention here, right? So payment type requires cross-references because In Clover, you have Visa, MasterCard, American Express. That's a perfect example. In QuickBooks, you have credit card, right? Then you'll create your own tender types to cover your Uber, your Yelps, or your whatever other prepayments, payments, or outside processors. All of those payment types somehow need to be referenced to payment types of QuickBooks unless you have one-to-one relationships, which most of the time you don't. So you need to use these tables to say, this payment type in QuickBooks references that payment type and vice versa, actually. And then, we talk about level of automation. And this is on the individual basis because, a couple of use cases that we want to think about is a customer not found in QuickBooks. What do you want us to do with it? What do you want the app to do with it? Because it can create the customer straight up in QuickBooks as a new customer. But that assumes there's no cross-referencing issues, right? Because what if you actually have that customer, but you just couldn't find it in that particular spelling, which is why we need to know how you, the merchant, will want to handle this particular use case, and then the app is programmed to handle it this case. You can also stop so that and give you the report and say, here's all the errors. This customer was not found, and then you can, cross-reference it, create it, do whatever you need to do as a customer. Or then you can assign all new customers to this one, right? So that's another nifty sort of a feature where you can say everything that comes new, let's just assign it to something that's called uncategorized customer. And then that, you got to figure that out. You look at it and you deal with it, but already now in QuickBooks. But the stop for manual review won't even take it to QuickBooks. It'll stop on A1 Sync interface, and it'll enable you to manipulate that data whichever way you want to before it goes into QuickBooks. Another use case that could happen is product not found in QuickBooks. And it's the same thing, right? So the actions are the same, the use cases are different. Customer not found, product not found, payment type not found. What do you want to do once this thing is turned on in these use cases? And that's a little bit of a customization that's also available in this plan. So the second price plan is $75 a month, as you can see, and it does require a one-time payment of $300 because all of this will be implemented by an expert once you guide the expert of how you want this thing to be turned on. All right. So now the last part that I want to talk about is the rev share. So this product is entirely open to you guys, the agents, the ones that are independent and are able to take on these kind of relationships with us. You're welcome to reach out. This product is live, it's ready to go, and is structured in a way that you can put your merchants onto this product and actually have some revenue share. So reach out and let's talk. I'm happy to hear from you all the time. Thank you, guys.